Okay, so picture this. It's the mid-1980s, and there's this computer that just can't seem to make up its mind. Is it for the office? Is it for the home enthusiast?
Yeah.
It's kind of dressed up for business, targeted at the serious user, the small business market. But underneath, well, it's got joystick ports, a cassette player built right in, graphics that could give home gaming machines a run for their money.
It really does sound like a machine caught between two worlds, doesn't it? A real identity crisis baked into the hardware.
Exactly. And that machine is the Sharp MZ800.
Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into the story behind this fascinating piece of tech. Our main source is a really critical bench test hardware review from the February 1985 issue of Personal Computer World. It was written by Tony Hetherington.
Right, and Sharp had some big goals for the MZ800. They were launching it into a really tough market, that sub-1,000-pound professional space. But it had this dual mandate, didn't it?
It really did. First, it needed to be a worthy successor to their popular home machine, the MZ700. Keep those enthusiasts happy.
But maybe more importantly, for Sharp's image anyway, it had to tackle the big complaints people had about their other business machines.
And those complaints were pretty serious back in '85.
Mm-hmm.
Sharp's business computers were often seen as, well, maybe not innovative enough. And the big one, lacking IBM compatibility.
Ah, the IBM standard. Yeah, by then, if you weren't playing nice with IBM in the office, you were kind of on the sidelines.
Totally. So Sharp desperately needed something that felt professional, could handle business tasks, and importantly, could actually read and write IBM data files. That was the dream.
So the big question for us today, looking at this review, is, did the MZ800, with its big new feature, this thing called personal CPM, actually pull it off? Could it win in that business market?
Or was it ultimately just too much like its home computer predecessor, the MZ700, betraying those corporate ambitions?
That's the core conflict, isn't it? Sharp usually kept things separate. You had the MZ80, the MZ700, those were for home users, hobbyists. Then you had their dedicated business line.
Exactly. The MZ800 was supposed to bridge that gap, look serious, be sold to businesses.
But, as we'll see, it was built on the bones of the MZ700, inheriting a lot of its home computer DNA, both good and bad. It aimed for innovation and compatibility, but the physical design maybe didn't quite get the memo.
Yeah, let's talk about the hardware itself, because when you read Hetherington's review from '85, the criticism starts almost immediately. This thing apparently did not look the part.
No, definitely not sleek. It was housed in this cream and brown plastic unit. The reviewer called its appearance rather angular, which sounds polite. Diplomatic, maybe. Angular is one thing, but it sounds more like mismatched pieces stuck together.
That's pretty much it. You get this immediate sense it wasn't designed as one cohesive unit. It suffered from what we could call the bolt-on problem.
Okay, explain that.
Well, the machine was really tall, kind of ungainly. And that high profile was mainly because the built-in cassette player and the expansion unit weren't integrated smoothly. They were literally secured with external screws, kind of tacked on, becoming part of the structure almost as an afterthought.
Wow. So if you actually took off those screwed-on bits, the cassette deck and the expansion bay...
Get this. The main unit underneath was apparently identical in size and shape to the MZ700, its home computer predecessor.
So they basically took the old chassis, slapped a big cassette unit on top and an expansion box on the side, and called it a day, giving it this, quote, uncomfortably high profile.
Pretty much. And that lack of physical integration, that's where it really starts to hurt its business credentials. Think about the whole setup you need, the main unit, a monitor, probably a disk drive.
Right, the complete system.
The reviewer called it an ungainly partnership. And here's the kicker. The total space it took up on a desk, its footprint.
Uh-oh. How bad was it?
It was noted as being twice that of an IBM PC.
Wait, double the IBM PC? In 1985, office desk space was precious.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's practically disqualifying for a serious business machine, isn't it?
It's a massive drawback right off the bat. It just screams hobbyist machine, something you'd maybe put in a spare room, not on a professional desk where space is money.
Absolutely. It really undercuts the whole business micro pitch immediately.
And the awkwardness didn't stop there. Even tiny details seemed off. The mains lead, for instance. described as being more suitable for a little portable cassette recorder.
Not exactly confidence-inspiring for a supposedly powerful computer, more mixed signals.
Then there's the placement of that built-in cassette player. Remember, that was essential for the cheaper entry-level model.
Where did they put it?
It was sort of perched way up on the top right of the unit, high up.
Okay.
So to read the tape counter, the user literally had to peer over the top of the machine.
You're kidding. You had to crane your neck just to see the tape counter? That's not just awkward, it's actively user-unfriendly.
Exactly. It signals a real lack of thought about professional ergonomics.
And what about the back panel? Switches, sockets.
Oh, it was a bit of a jumble. The on-off switch, power sockets, the volume control, because remember it had that fancy SEMP, and the reset switch were all clustered together.
Reset near the volume sounds risky.
The reviewer did note the reset switch was uncomfortably near the volume control. Apparently, though, you needed a firm positive click to activate the reset, so accidental bumps while adjusting volume weren't too likely.
Small comfort. It's still a design flaw waiting to happen. They shouldn't be that close together on a machine meant for serious work.
Agreed. Now, move to the keyboard. The actual feel was apparently okay. It used the same 69-key QWERTY layout as the MZ700, have 5 function keys, a cursor cluster. Keys felt positive. Good for typing.
Okay, something positive then?
Well, yeah, yes, but the layout had issues. The insert and delete keys, which you use all the time for editing.
Yeah, where were they?
Positioned a little too far away, kind of floating above the cursor keys. Made them awkward to reach quickly, broke your typing flow.
Annoying. And then there was the graphics situation on the keyboard. This part is almost unbelievable.
Oh, this perfectly captures the identity crisis. The alphanumeric keys could switch to graphics mode, letting you type special symbols. The NZ700 keyboard actually had these graphic symbols printed on the keys.
And the MZ800.
Sharp omitted them from the keycaps. They didn't tool the keyboard properly for their business machine.
So how did you know what graphic symbol you were typing?
Get this, they supplied a pack of stick-on labels.
Stick-on labels. On a professional computer costing potentially close to £1,000 with peripherals, you had to finish assembling the keyboard yourself.
Yep, stick-on labels. It's just, wow. It completely undermines any pretense of professional quality control. Imagine unboxing your new business micro and finding a sheet of decals.
That's just, yeah, wow. Kills the premium feel instantly. And wasn't there something weird with the shift keys, too?
Oh, the shift key paradox. This is truly baffling. First, no dedicated CCAP-PS-LOCK key. Annoying, but okay.
And the paradox.
The 2 shift keys, by default, did the opposite of what you'd expect. Pressing shift with the letter key gave you lowercase. Letting go gave you uppercase.
Wait, that's backwards. Why on earth would they do that?
Who knows? It's totally counterintuitive. Anyone who uses standard keyboards would be immediately confused and slowed down. You had to press CTRL-E to switch it back to normal behavior.
Another hurdle for the user to overcome. It just seems like they were actively making it difficult to use as a standard machine.
It really does. Okay, so if using it was frustrating, trying to service the MZ800 sounds like a nightmare. The reviewer said accessing the internals required a determined effort.
Determined effort. Sounds ominous. How bad was it?
It sounds less like maintenance, more like surgery. First, 3 screws underneath the keyboard. Okay. Then, 5 more screws holding that bolted-on cassette expansion box.
8 screws so far.
Then you had to disconnect those units internally. Then find 2 more screws hidden away. And finally, you had to physically pry the case top off with a screwdriver or something similar.
10 screws, internal disconnections, and prying. Just to open the case? That's insane.
It really confirms that bolted-on theory, doesn't it? They clearly didn't design it for easy access. It's an MZ700 chassis they modified, making servicing incredibly difficult.
Which is terrible for a business machine. Downtime costs money. This complexity makes quick repairs impossible.
Absolutely. To be fair, once you did get inside, the main circuit board itself was apparently extremely neat. Good quality components from Sharp, Mitsubishi, NEC, TI. Minimal wiring, mostly just for the joystick ports. So the core engineering was solid.
Small consolation when it takes an archaeology degree to get to it. But that neatness leads to the final hardware flaw, right? The disk interface.
Yes, the interface needed for the big selling point, personal CPM. They used the existing MZ700 disk interface card. It slid into the expansion unit, okay, but it stuck out of the back of the machine by about 1.5 inches.
Just sticking out. Exposed.
Yep. Leaving, as the review put it, the vulnerable circuits, open to dust, damage, static. Sharp apparently promised a cover would be added eventually, but the review unit just had these exposed electronic hanging out the back.
It's the perfect metaphor for the whole machine, isn't it? A slightly awkward, unfinished extension bolted onto an older design.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The hardware just felt like a series of compromises.
Okay, let's move beyond the challenging physical design and look under the hood. What was powering this thing?
The heart of the MZ800 was the Zlog Z80A processor, a very common, very reliable 8-bit chip running here at 3.5 megahertz.
P80A, pretty standard for the time range.
Standard, yes. Reliable, absolutely.
Yeah.
But 3.5 megahertz in 1985, well, the market was already starting to shift towards 16-bit processors like the 8086 found in the IBM PC and its clones, or even faster Z80 implementations.
So sticking with the 3.5 megahertz Z80A was maybe a bit conservative for a new business machine?
You could say that. It ensured compatibility with older Sharp software, which was probably a factor, but it wasn't exactly cutting-edge speed. A competitor like the Apricot F1, also in that price bracket, used a 16-bit 8086. So Sharp chose reliability over raw power, another sign maybe pointing away from pure business focus.
And memory.
It came with 64K of user RAM, which was pretty standard for an 8-bit machine of this class, plus a 16K ROM that held the basic system monitor program.
Okay, so standard processor, standard RAM. But you mentioned earlier it had some surprising multimedia features, especially the sound.
Oh yeah, this is where that home computer DNA really shines through. The sound was handled by a Texas Instruments TI 76489 chip.
The TI chip, wasn't that used in quite a few home computers and consoles?
Exactly. It offered 3 independent sound channels, plus a noise channel, over a range of 8 octaves. The reviewer explicitly states this capability equaled that of the Commodore 64.
Whoa, hang on, Commodore 64 level sound. In a machine supposedly targeting small businesses competing with the famously beep-boop IBM PC. Why spend money on that?
It's a fantastic question, isn't it? It makes almost no sense if you view it purely as a business machine. It's a massive nod to the home user, the MZ700 owner, looking to upgrade. They wanted good sound, good graphics. The business division might have been marketing it, but the engineers were clearly thinking about features home users would appreciate.
It really highlights that identity crisis again. Okay, so C64 level sound. What about the graphics? Was that also an upgrade?
Definitely. A big upgrade from the MZ700. It had a new, custom-built video chip. This was supported by 16K of dedicated video RAM, or VRAM.
And you could add more VRAM.
Yeah, there were 2 empty sockets on the board where you could plug in an optional extra 16K of VRAM.
So what kind of resolutions could it handle?
With the standard 16K VRAM, you got 320 by 200 pixels, with the choice of 4 colors on screen at once, chosen from a palette of 16.
16 colors available. That sounds pretty good for 85.
It does. And if you install that optional extra VRAM, bumping it up to 32K total, you could reach the maximum resolution. 640 by 200 pixels, again in 4 colors, from that same palette of 16. True high-res for the time.
But there's always a but with this machine, isn't there? Didn't you mention a color paradox?
Ah, yes. The machine could generate 16 colors. Great. But the monitor Sharp recommended, the MZ1D-So5 color monitor.
Let me guess.
It only supported 8 distinct colors.
So you had a 16-color computer hooked up to an 8-color monitor. How did that work?
Apparently, the extra 8 colors the computer produced were just lighter shades of the first 8, and the monitor simply couldn't distinguish them. So light gray looked the same as black, light blue the same as dark blue, and so on. You paid for 16 colors, but you effectively only saw 8.
Another mismatch between the components. It's like different teams design different parts without talking to each other.
It really feels that way sometimes. And adding insult to injury, the review mentions the RGB cable built into the recommended monitor only just reached the socket on the MZ800. No slack at all. Just felt cheap, accommodating, not properly designed.
Okay, let's talk connectivity. Back to the home user features again.
Absolutely. Big surprise here. 2 standard joystick ports.
Standard, like Atari style.
Exactly. Sharp usually used their own weird proprietary joystick connector. Switching to the de facto standard was a huge plus for home users and gamers. Massive compatibility boost.
That's definitely leaning towards the home market. What else?
It had DIP switches inside, little physical switches you could flip to change settings.
What kind of settings?
Things like enabling an MZ700 compatibility mode, which is clever, reversing the polarity for an external cassette port, useful if you had older gear, and selecting between Sharp's own printer standard or the more common Centronics parallel port standard.
So quite flexible. It suggests they knew people would be plugging all sorts of existing peripherals into this thing.
Definitely catered to tinkerers and those upgrading existing setups. Now, for storage, if you wanted to do serious work, you needed the optional disk drives.
What were they like?
They were existing Sharp units, a pair of 5.25-inch drives, each holding 320K. They had this slightly unusual vertical design and a turn lock mechanism to close the drive door. Standard stuff at the time, mostly.
But there were other, more unusual storage options too, weren't there? Trying to be cheaper or faster.
Yes, two interesting ones. First was the RAM file card.
Okay, what did that do?
It was a card you plugged into that expansion slot. It gave you 64K of extra RAM, but the system could treat it like a super fast disk drive. Access times were dramatically faster than floppy disks.
Sounds great. Faster access is always good.
It is, but there was a terrifying catch. Volatility.
Meaning?
Meaning anything stored on that RAM file vanished instantly if the power went off. Or if you just switched the machine off normally. Poof, gone.
Oh, wow. So you'd have to constantly remember to save anything important from the RAM file back to tape or a real disk.
Exactly. It was incredibly fast for temporary work, like maybe sorting data or compiling code, but utterly useless for permanent storage, unless you were extremely disciplined about backing up. High speed, high risk.
Okay, what was the other option? The quick disk.
Yeah, the quick disk. This was designed to replace the built-in cassette drive entirely. It used these small 2.5-inch disks that held about 64K each.
Sounds like a smaller floppy. Was it faster than cassette?
Yes, faster than cassette, but it was a sequential disk unit.
Sequential, meaning you couldn't just jump to a file.
Pretty much. It had to read through the disk in order, like a tape. So while better than standard cassette, it still had a fairly slow average access time. The review mentions about 8 seconds, because it might have to spool through a chunk of the disk to find what you wanted. It was strictly for sequential files.
So another compromise. Faster than tape, cheaper than floppy, but not as flexible.
Exactly. Both the RAM file and the quick disk show Sharp trying to find clever, maybe cheaper ways to offer speed or storage alternatives, highlighting the cost pressures they were likely under, trying to pack so many features into this machine.
All right, we've talked about the clunky hardware, the mixed bag specs. Now let's get to the software, what the review called the MZ800's ace in the hole.
Yes, personal CPM. This was the big news. When you switch the machine on, you got a menu. Use the built-in monitor, load a language from cassette or load from disk. And crucially, if you had a disk ready in the drive, it would just load automatically.
And that disk would contain personal CPM or PCPM.
That's right. The MZ800 was actually the very first computer to ship with PCPM. It was developed by Digital Research, the original creators of CPM, specifically to be more user-friendly.
Okay, let's pause there. For listeners maybe not familiar with the era, why did standard CPM need a friendly version? What was wrong with it? The review called its predecessors antisocial.
Antisocial is a good word. Standard CPM, control program for microcomputers, was incredibly powerful and dominant in the early 8-bit world.
Yeah.
But it was not friendly. It was pure command line, just a blinking prompt, usually A.
Like DOS, but maybe even more cryptic?
Arguably, yes. You had to know exact, often very short and obscure commands to do anything: copy files, format disks, run programs, things like PIP for copying, stat for status. There was no graphical interface, no menus, no help system built in. If you typed something wrong, you just got an error message. It was efficient for experts, but really intimidating for newcomers.
Okay, so PCPM was Sharp's and Digital Research's answer to that. How did it make things friendlier?
When PCPM booted up, it was set by default to run something called VCCP,
VCCP.
Visual Central Command Processor.
Different.
Basically, it was a graphical shell, a front end that sat on top of the raw CPM operating system.
Ah, so it hid the scary command line.
Exactly. It presented a much friendlier visual way to manage files and run programs. It's designed as a very friendly system guide, trying to make the power of CPM accessible to ordinary users.
But the reviewer found some irony there, right?
Yeah, a neat observation. The irony was that the target market's small business owners, serious home users, were perhaps the least likely group to have suffered the trauma of using old-school antisocial CPM. So they might not fully appreciate just how big a leap forward this friendly VCCP interface actually was. Its friendliness was potentially lost on them because they didn't know the pain it was solving.
Interesting point. So what did this VCCP actually look like on screen?
It used 3 main windows. There was a large main window, about 20 lines high and 69 characters wide, which usually showed your files. Then a narrower command window, just 10 characters wide, listing available commands. And finally, a 3-line information area at the bottom for messages and status updates.
Sounds a bit like an early file manager like Windows Explorer or Finder, but text-based. How did you use it?
You'd use the cursor keys to move up and down the list of commands in the command window, things like erase, rename, print, run. Once the command you wanted was highlighted, you'd hit the carriage return key, or CR, to execute it.
So no typing keyip bamyfil.txt.
Nope. Much less chance of making syntax errors. It made basic file operations way more intuitive.
And it used the function keys, too. You mentioned there were only 5 physical keys.
Yeah, they did something clever here. They managed to map 16 different functions onto just those 5 keys. The 5th function key, F5, was always set to next. So F1, F2, F3, and F4 would have one set of functions, like copy, rename, erase, run. Pressing F5 would then cycle the display to show the next 4 available functions on F1 through F4 and so on. A neat way to pack more functionality in.
That is pretty clever. And the system was customizable, too.
Very customizable. Users could actually redefine what 32 different key combinations did, things like Shift, plus the spacebar, Tab, Insert, Delete, or the cursor keys. You could really tailor the system control to your liking.
Wow, that's a lot of power.
And there was a setup utility. This let you change things like the screen colors. Maybe you didn't like the default cyan text on a black background. You could change it to magenta and green or whatever. You could also change what program ran automatically when the system booted up.
So you didn't have to start with a VCCP if you were a power user.
Exactly. And if you were really advanced, you can even add your own custom commands to that VCCP command list by editing a configuration file called vccp.cfg.
So, friendly for beginners, but still open for experts. What about standard CPM tools? Were they still there?
Oh, yes. PCPM came with the usual utilities, like format for preparing disks and the infamous PIP program for file copying, although you'd mostly use the VCCP for that.
PIP, Peripheral Interchange Program, right? Famous for being powerful but tricky.
That's the one. Essential, but with syntax that could trip up anyone. So having the VCCP handle common PIP tasks was a big win.
Did PCPM add any interesting new utility?
It did. One standout was Disk Up. This was a seriously powerful tool.
What did it let you do?
It lets you look directly at the raw data on a disk. Any file, any block, any sector. And not just look, you could change the data right there on the disk.
Oh, sounds dangerous.
It absolutely could be. One wrong byte change, and you could corrupt a whole disk. But for programmers debugging tricky problems or for trying to recover corrupted data, it was invaluable. A real power user tool.
Anything else?
It also included a software clock. It reset to 0 every time you booted, so you had to set it using a time command, but it was there.
Okay, so PCPM sounds like a really significant improvement, especially with VCCP. But what was the killer feature for the business market, the reason this whole machine existed?
IBM data compatibility. This was the absolute key. It directly addressed that major criticism of Sharp's earlier business machine.
How did it achieve that?
Through another utility called diskdef. This was brilliant. It let you tell drive B to read and write disks using different formats. Not just other Sharp formats, but crucially the format used by the IBM PC.
Ah, so you could actually swap disks between the Sharp MZ800 and an IBM PC.
Exactly. That was the magic bullet.
Hmm.
Imagine you're working on, say, a WordStar document or a spreadsheet data file on your IBM PC at the office. In 1985, networking wasn't common. How do you take work home?
SneakerNet. Carry the floppy disk home.
Right. And with the MZ800 using diskdef, you could pop that IBM formatted disk into drive B, load the data into your application on the Sharp, work on it, save it back to the IBM format disk, and take it back to the office the next day. Seamless data transfer.
That is huge. That capability alone probably justified the machine's existence for a certain type of user.
Absolutely. It was a primary draw for that target demographic. The professional who had an IBM at work but wanted a powerful, compatible machine at home without necessarily buying another expensive IBM. It was the bridge.
Okay, PCPM sounds like a winner. What about the other language included, BASIC?
Yes, MZ800 BASIC. It was quite powerful, especially for graphics, but it came with its own set of compromises, mainly tied to the entry-level cassette system.
How so?
Loading it from cassette took a long time. Over 4.5 minutes, according to the review.
4.5 minutes just to load the programming language. Ouch.
Yeah. And once it finally loaded, it used up a lot of memory. It left less than 22K of the machine's 64K RAM free for your actual basic program and data.
That's not much space. Why was it so big?
Probably because it included some really advanced features, particularly for graphics. This BASIC introduced true high-resolution commands.
Like what?
Easy-to-use commands like set and reset to plot or erase pixels, line to draw lines, BEPs to draw rectangles with an option to fill them in, which was important, circle, and paint to fill enclosed areas with color. Pretty sophisticated stuff for a built-in BASIC.
Sounds good. Anything particularly stand out?
The absolute star was a command called symbol. The reviewer called this the most powerful command in the language.
Symbol. What did it do?
It let you define your own custom graphics character, like a little spaceship or an icon. Then it could draw that character anywhere on the screen. But here's the cool part. You could also magnify it horizontally or vertically up to 255 times its original size.
Wow, scale it up massively.
Yep. And you could also rotate the resulting pattern by 90 degrees, all within that single symbol command.
That sounds almost like hardware sprites, but done in software.
Exactly. The MZ800 didn't have dedicated sprite hardware like the C64. So the symbol command with its scaling and rotation was clearly designed as a software compensation. A very clever way to get sprite-like effects from BASIC.
Very impressive. But structurally was the BASIC modern.
Less so. It still lacked modern programming structures like repeat until or while-when loops, which are becoming more common. It relied heavily on GOTO and GOSIP.
So still a bit old school in that respect.
A bit. But it did offer one nice concession to structured programming and making code easier to read: the label command.
How did that work?
Instead of just using line numbers like GOTO 1000, you could give a line number a meaningful name. For example, 100 label error handler. Then later in your code, you could write GOSUB error handler.
So much clearer than trying to remember what line 1000 does.
Exactly. A simple change, but it makes programs significantly more readable and easier to maintain. A definite step forward.
And did BASIC handle files okay?
Yes, the file handling commands were extended. You could work with sequential files not just on tape or disk, but also using that fast RAM file card or sending data out through the RS-232 serial port using pretty standard commands like wopen #writeOpen, ropen #readopen, print tag, and npush tag. So basic programmers could tap into those alternative storage and communication options too.
Okay, so we've got this picture of a machine with, let's say, quirky hardware, but some really powerful and innovative software, especially that friendly PCPM and the IBM compatibility. Now, how much did this cost back in 1985?
The review mentions prices weren't totally finalized at the time, but the estimates are revealing. The most basic MZ800, the one relying on the cassette deck,
Yeah.
accepted to be around 250 pounds, which, if you adjust for inflation, is roughly 1,025 pounds in today's money. Not super cheap, but maybe accessible.
And the other versions?
Adding that quick disk drive instead of the cassette added about 200 pounds. So 450 pounds-ish, or closer to 1,850 pounds today.
But the real deal, the version that makes sense for the business angle, the one with the twin floppy drives needed for PCCM and that IBM compatibility.
That was estimated at around 650 pounds, so about 2,665 pounds in 25 pounds. A much more significant investment.
And you still needed a monitor on top of that, right?
Yep. That recommended Sharp MZ1D05 color monitor was 285 pounds 95 on its own. That's another 1,170 pounds or so today.
So let's add that up. The full PCPM system with twin drives and the color monitor, 650 pounds plus 286 pounds, comes to 936 pounds.
Exactly. Placing it squarely in that under 1,000-pound business micro category they were aiming for. About 3,835 pounds in today's terms for the complete, useful setup.
And Sharp was really pushing this business machine angle hard, weren't they?
Absolutely insistent. It was marketed and sold only through their computer division, the business channel. They deliberately kept it away from the home computer division that handled the MZ700.
But the reviewer thought that was maybe misguided.
Yeah. Hetherington suggested this strict business-only policy might actually backfire, hurting the machine's credibility.
Why? Because it just didn't look or feel like a typical business machine?
Precisely. With all those home-oriented features we've covered, the standard joysticks, the built-in cassette, that C64-level sound chip, the powerful graphics basic, the machine just screamed, high-end home computer. Trying to pretend it was purely for business seemed, well, like denial.
So where did the reviewer think its real market was? Who is actually going to buy this?
The review nailed it, I think. Its strongest appeal was to that very specific but growing group. People who used an IBM PC at work and needed a serious compatible system at home.
The home professional needing that data bridge.
Exactly. It wasn't really meant to compete head-to-head with the IBM PC in the office. It was designed to be its partner at home, a powerful, feature-rich companion that could talk to the office standard.
Okay, so if we look at the competition, in the actual business market, that sub-1,000-pound space,
It faced really tough rivals. Machines like the Apricot F1 were mentioned. They were often sleeker, sometimes faster with 16-bit chips, and crucially, looked like they belonged on an office desk.
whereas the Sharp,
Its ungainly appearance and huge footprint were seen as major liabilities in that environment. The prediction was it would struggle to gain traction in businesses where aesthetics and desk space mattered.
but flip that coin. What about the home market, especially the higher end?
That's where it looked much stronger. Its best success, the review predicted, would likely be against its own older sibling, the MZ700, people looking to upgrade from that.
Although Sharp wasn't helping by keeping the MZ700 price high.
Yeah, apparently Sharp had no plans to reduce the price of the 700. A strange decision, maybe showing how convinced they were that the 800 was purely business and not just an upgrade path for 700 owners.
Who else was it competing against in that upgraded home space?
Machines like the Memotech RS-128 or the Advance 86 were mentioned. Against those, the MZ800 looked pretty competitive. It was often cheaper, and it had that killer app, the new user-friendly personal CPM, which was genuinely exciting for home users wanting more power.
But it wasn't perfect even for the home market, right? Especially for gamers.
No, definitely some drawbacks there. Despite the great sound chip, the lack of true hardware sprites was a problem for fast-action games. That software symbol command was clever for programming, but not a full replacement for dedicated hardware in games.
And the entry-level model still relied on slow cassette loading for BASIC.
Exactly. So first-time buyers just wanting to play games quickly, or people used to the instant load cartridges on consoles, were likely to be put off.
So it ends up in this awkward middle ground, maybe too clunky and home-oriented for the office, but perhaps a bit too serious or complex for the casual home user or gamer.
That sums it up pretty well. It perfectly served a very specific niche, the professional needing IBM compatibility at home, but struggled to break out beyond that.
Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around this fascinating, contradictory machine. On the one hand, the MZ800 really did deliver on some key promises, didn't it?
It absolutely did. It answered the critics by providing that crucial IBM data compatibility. And personal CPM, especially with the VCCP front end, was genuinely innovative. It made a powerful but notoriously difficult operating system accessible to normal people. That's a huge achievement.
That brilliant software was trapped inside a less than brilliant box.
Unfortunately, yes. The physical execution really let it down, because it was fundamentally based on the older MZ700 chassis with bits bolted on. You got that enormous footprint, the awkward layout, the nightmare maintenance, the exposed interface. All these things severely limited its appeal, especially in the business world it was supposedly targeting.
So it ends up being this incredible compromise, a machine that maybe unintentionally perfectly captured a moment of transition.
I think so. It really catered to that specific user who existed in the mid-'80s. The professional needing to bridge the gap between the IBM standard at work and a powerful, capable machine at home, a niche that would become increasingly important.
And maybe the MZ800 highlights the sheer difficulty of building that kind of bridge back then.
It really does. You see this stark tension. On one side, you have incredibly forward-thinking software design, the user-friendliness of PCPM, the cleverness of the symbol command in BASIC, the readability improvements from Label, really smart stuff.
And on the other side,
You have this physically cumbersome hardware derived from an older model, requiring 10 screws and prying just to open it. It feels like the software ambition was years ahead of the physical industrial design they were willing to commit to.
which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listeners, to ponder. Does the software ultimately win out? Did the brilliance of PCPM and that essential IBM compatibility make the physical flaws worth tolerating?
Or did the hardware, the sheer size, the clunkiness, the bolted-on feeling, ultimately hold back the potential of that ace-in-the-hole operating system? Did the body constrain the mind, so to speak?
It's a fascinating question. The Sharp MZ800 really feels like a perfect snapshot of its time trying to be serious and productive, yet still embracing the color, sound, and excitement of the home computer revolution.
An ambition we still see today, really, trying to make our powerful work machines also capable of entertainment and creativity. The MZ800 was an early, if awkward, attempt at that fusion.
Well, if you enjoyed this deep dive into computing history through the lens of a 1985 magazine review, please do follow or subscribe so you catch our next exploration.
Until then, may your own computer setups be elegant, your data transfers flawless, and your curiosity always engaged.